The halls of the Red Keep were darker than usual, though torches lined the stone walls in a vain attempt to drive away the gloom. Robert Baratheon sat slouched on the Iron Throne, his face older, puffier, yet still holding on to that stubborn arrogance that had once made men follow him into battle. His crown sat loosely on his brow, more out of habit than pride now. The boar hadn't killed him. That cursed hunt, which had nearly taken his life 5 years ago, had left him weak but not dead. It was Sir Loras who had saved him, rushed back in time to stop the bleeding. Ever since then, Robert had changed, but not in the way his allies had hoped. He drank more. He trusted less. He ruled with a mix of nostalgia and fear. The ghost of Rhaegar Targaryen still haunted him, even in sleep. And now the dead prince's sister had returned. "She has dragons," Varys had said softly during the last small council meeting. Robert had roared with laughter then. "I've killed men with magic. I've killed armies with fewer swords than I had wenches. Dragons!" He spat on the ground. "Let the bitch come." But when he was alone, when the wine hadn't numbed him completely, he'd stare at the painted table in the war room. He'd trace the map of Westeros with trembling fingers, especially the spot where Dragonstone lay. That cursed island was alive again. Word had reached King's Landing that Daenerys Stormborn had sailed from Meereen with a fleet stronger than most kingdoms. She had freed slaves, broken chains, and now she was riding with 3 beasts that breathed fire hot enough to melt steel. They said her army didn't rape or loot. They conquered like conquerors of old, with discipline and fury. Robert hated how much the people whispered her name, Khaleesi, Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains. He hated it almost as much as he hated that Jon Arryn was not around to advise him anymore. Cersei was no comfort. Her words were venom now. "She's coming for your head, husband. She'll burn your bastards alive. Maybe I'll watch with wine in hand." She smiled when she said it. He'd slapped her once. She hadn't flinched. The only man who still spoke to Robert like a brother was Ned Stark, who had remained hand after all these years. He hadn't returned to Winterfell even when the North grew restless. Duty had kept him in King's Landing, or maybe pity. "She isn't her father, Robert," Ned had warned. "If she brings fire, it's because she was born in ashes. We must treat with her." "Treat!" Robert's voice had boomed through the chamber. "I'll treat with her the same way I treated her brother, by cracking her skull on a war hammer." But that was bluster. The kind of bluster only the drunken king still believed in. Ned had seen the fear behind his friend's eyes. Now, ravens arrived daily, black wings, black words. Daenerys had taken Dorne without bloodshed. House Martell bent the knee. The Unsullied marched up from the south. Highgarden had fallen in a single night. Rhaegal, the Green Dragon, had burned their gold fields to cinders. Tyrell Bannerman deserted in droves. Then came the worst news yet. Viserion had been seen flying over the Stormlands. Robert's heart clenched. That was his land, his house. Storm's End, where he had once starved as a boy, now stood in shadow. In the war chamber, a fresh map was unfurled. 3 black marks were placed, one for each dragon, spreading across the south like a plague of fire. "She's not coming," Ned said. "She's already here." Robert stood silent, his breathing heavy, his hands trembling. For the first time in decades, the king of the 7 kingdoms wasn't sure if his crown meant anything anymore. His hammer, once legendary, lay dusty beside the throne. It felt heavier now, like it knew it had no power against fire and wings, and yet Robert Baratheon was no coward. "Summon the lords," he finally growled. "We ride to war. If the Dragon Queen wants my head, she'll have to take it from my burnt corpse." As he walked out of the chamber, no one noticed the shadow that passed over the Red Keep, massive, winged, and silent. Drogon had arrived. The sky over King's Landing turned grey, not from clouds, but from ash. At first, people thought, It was smoke from distant battles, but then came the smell, thick, bitter, and ancient. The kind of scent that settled deep in the bones. Fire had returned to the capital, not in myth, but in flesh and wings. From the balcony of Maegor's holdfast, Robert watched the skies. His eyes narrowed as a dark shape circled far above the city. Drogon. His wingspan blotted the sun like an omen. The king said nothing, but those near him felt it. His fear, hidden behind the scowl. He turned to Ned, who stood close, arms crossed, face carved from the ice of the north. "How in the seven hells do you kill a beast like that, Stark?" "You don't," Ned replied flatly. "You endure," Robert spat, spoken like a man who never tasted real war. "We killed dragons once. What makes this one different?" Ned didn't answer. He didn't need to. Robert knew the answer. Aegon's dragons had no rider burning with vengeance. Inside the throne room, panic had taken root. Lords shouted over each other. Sir Barristan remained calm, but even he kept glancing toward the windows. Ser Jaime sharpened his sword out of habit, though his smirk was gone. Varys slithered closer to the king. "Your Grace, perhaps it is not too late to seek terms. Daenerys Targaryen has no love for you, but she may still value peace," Robert roared. "Peace? After she's burned my lands and stolen my bannermen? I'll have her head on a spike before she speaks a word in my hall." The doors burst open. A scout entered, dust-covered, eyes wild. "She's at the gates. The Dragon Queen. She's here." The room fell silent. Robert stood tall, his massive frame still imposing even under the weight of age and wine. He walked toward the Iron Throne, placed a hand on the hilt of his warhammer, and looked at Ned. "She wants a show? Then let her see one. Open the gates. Let her in." "Robert, no!" Ned stepped forward. "You're not the man you were at the Trident. You fight her now. You die." "I've been dying since the day I sat on this cursed throne," Robert said bitterly. "Let it end in fire if it must, but I'll face her." The gates of King's Landing groaned open. Daenerys Targaryen rode in, not on a horse, but on the back of Drogon, who landed with a thunderous crash just outside the Great Sept. The people didn't cheer, they didn't scream. They stared, awestruck and afraid, as the Queen of Fire dismounted, her white hair flowing like a banner of ice and fury. She was dressed in black and red, the colors of her house, her face unreadable. Behind her marched Grey Worm and a battalion of Unsullied armored in silence. Dothraki screamers circled the outer walls. Viserion and Rhaegal flew overhead like twin shadows of death. Inside the Red Keep, Robert Baratheon waited, seated not on the Iron Throne, but beside it, his war hammer across his lap. He refused to give her the pleasure of seeing him weak upon that spiked monstrosity, the same throne her father had once ruled from. When she entered, it was like winter meeting wildfire. Their eyes met, and for a moment the ghosts of Rhaegar and Lyanna hung in the air between them. "So," Robert said, voice gruff, "this is the girl I failed to kill." Daenerys didn't blink. "And this is the drunk who stole my family's crown." He laughed bitterly. "I stole nothing. Your father burned my people. I gave this realm peace." "You gave it rot," she snapped. "Your peace was a lie. You traded one tyrant for years of decay. The people starve, the houses bleed, and you sat on that throne and drank while the world crumbled." Robert's knuckles turned white around his hammer. "And you'll fix it by burning it all down?" "I'll fix it by removing what's broken," Daenerys said coldly, "starting with you." The Unsullied stepped forward. Grey Worm waited for her word. Robert stood. The room tensed. For a brief moment, silence ruled the Red Keep again. "I killed your brother," Robert said, stepping off the dais. "He died screaming, blood in his silver hair. And I'll tell you this, girl, he died better than you ever will." Daenerys' eyes burned. Robert raised his hammer. Daenerys whispered one word. "Dracarys." From the shattered windows above, Drogon's roar shook the stone itself. The Red Keep shook with a sound that hadn't been heard in centuries. A dragon's fury unleashed at close range. Flames erupted through the throne room's shattered windows as Drogon responded to his queen's command. The firestorm hit the side of the keep like a hammer of the gods. Stone cracked, tapestries ignited, and the air became thick with smoke and screams. But Robert Baratheon, the last of the old rebels, did not flinch. He raised his warhammer high, his beard singed by the heat pouring in. The fire had not reached him yet, not fully, but the room had become a furnace. "Come down here, beast!" Robert roared toward the sky. "Face a real king." But Drogon did not need to come down. His fire would do the talking. Ned Stark pulled Robert back behind a collapsing pillar just as a torrent of flame poured through the window, sweeping across the floor like a tidal wave of death. The Iron Throne itself began to glow red-hot under the onslaught. The very air screamed. When the fire finally ceased, silence fell again. Ash floated through the air like cursed snow. Robert stumbled from behind the pillar, coughing violently, his cloak half burned, but still alive. His eyes found the throne. The Iron Throne had melted, warped by the dragon fire. Its jagged swords, twisted and bent, still smoking. A symbol of power destroyed in moments. Daenerys stepped forward, her face unreadable. "You still stand?" she said softly, almost with surprise. Robert laughed, though blood now colored the corner of his mouth. "Aye, it'll take more than fire to kill a Baratheon. Then I'll finish it myself," she said, stepping closer. But before she could, Ned Stark moved between them. "Enough!" His voice cut through the smoke like ice through flesh. "Is this what your father's throne was worth? Death, fire, ashes!" Daenerys stopped, staring at the man who once led Robert's rebellion. She had heard stories of Eddard Stark, honor, loyalty, justice, the kind of man her father feared more than any. "Move aside, Lord Stark," she said. "This is not your fight." "It became mine the moment you burned my people," Ned said calmly. "And the moment he called for your death years ago. I stood by then." "I won't again," Robert groaned behind him. "Don't talk like she's innocent, Ned. She came with dragons. She burned my lands." "You burned first, Robert," Ned said quietly, not turning around. "You ordered her murder as a child. If Sir Loras hadn't stopped your wine-sick hand, her blood would have soaked the sea years ago." Daenerys' voice trembled. "You tried to kill me." "When I was just a girl?" Robert straightened, wiping the blood from his chin. "You're damn right I did. I should have finished it. Maybe I could have spared the realm this madness." Daenerys' jaw tightened. Her hand clenched into a fist, but she didn't give the command again. "Then why didn't you?" she asked coldly. Robert said nothing. Maybe the answer was buried under years of guilt, regret, and wine. Or maybe he simply didn't know anymore. Just then, the great doors of the throne room burst open again. Tyrion Lannister entered, face grey with dust, voice urgent. "Stop this madness." Daenerys turned to him. "What madness?" "I'm taking back what was stolen. You're burning it to the ground in the process," he said, breathless. "The city is turning. The people fear you, not love you. This will not be a reign of peace. It'll be another reign of fire." She hesitated. Tyrion walked forward carefully. "Don't become what you hate." Behind him, Jon Snow appeared, armor dented, eyes torn between duty and despair. "Enough blood," Jon said. "There's been enough." Robert looked at the boy, squinting. "Who the hell are you?" Jon didn't answer. Ned did, his voice low. "Your sister's bastard." Robert raised an eyebrow. "He's got a northern look and something else." Daenerys stared at Jon, too, her expression suddenly tense. She knew what the something else was. And if Robert lived long enough to learn it, the war wouldn't just be against her, it would become another Targaryen purge. The old king noticed the shift in her gaze. His eyes narrowed. "What is it? What's the secret?" No one answered. But for the first time, Robert sensed the tide turning, not just in battle but in legacy. He looked again at the melted Iron Throne, now a symbol of everything lost. And for the first time in his life, Robert Baratheon fell silent. For a long moment no one spoke. The great hall stood in ruins. Smoke still coiled around the broken stone. The Iron Throne, once feared by all, now looked like a melted carcass of steel and pride. Yet amidst the ruin stood the ghosts of two wars: Robert Baratheon, the Hammer King who had slain dragons, and Daenerys Targaryen, the last blood of old Valyria. Robert wiped ash from his face, breathing heavy. He looked around at the gathered crowd. Ned Stark, his oldest friend, turned quiet judge. Tyrion Lannister, the clever rat who always knew more than he said. And then his gaze stopped on Jon Snow, standing silently beside Daenerys. Something about the boy unnerved him. "You!" Robert growled, pointing at Jon with a cracked finger. "Why does she look at you like that?" "What in the seven hells are you?" Jon didn't answer. Daenerys stepped forward, voice like flint. "He's not just Ned Stark's bastard." Tyrion's eyes widened. "Daenerys, don't—" But it was too late. "He's Aegon Targaryen," she said coldly. "Son of Rhaegar, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne." The words dropped like wildfire in dry grass. Robert's face froze. Then slowly, his lips parted in a twisted grin. "No, you lie." "It's true," Ned said, shame written across his face. "He's my sister's son, Lyanna's. Rhaegar didn't kidnap her. They loved each other. They were married in secret." Robert stumbled back a step as if struck. His eyes went wide, haunted. Lyanna loved him? The words left his lips like poison. No, she would never. She hated him. I loved her. "She died giving birth to his child," Ned whispered. "She made me promise to protect him. From you." Robert's hand reached for his hammer. It trembled, not with anger, but with heartbreak. "All these years, all that war, for love that was never mine." The hall was silent, each soul held still by the weight of a truth long buried. Daenerys turned to Jon. "Now you see why he'll never let you live. He'd rather kill the last Targaryen than kneel." Jon's eyes met Robert's. "I don't want the throne." Robert barked a bitter laugh. "You think that matters, boy? You carry the name. That's all that matters." Then he looked at Ned. "And you lied to me. You, my brother in arms. You betrayed your king. I protected your realm," Ned said, steady. "If I had told you the truth, would you have let the boy live?" Robert didn't answer. Because the answer was no. His silence said it all. "Then don't talk to me of betrayal," Ned added. At that, Robert's face hardened once more. He stepped forward slowly, like a beast wounded but not broken. His grip tightened around the warhammer. The old rage returned to his eyes. "I should have killed you both," he growled, glaring at Daenerys and Jon. "Should have finished it before it started. I won't make that mistake again." Grey Worm stepped in front of Daenerys instantly. The Unsullied raised their spears. Tyrion looked between them all, panic rising in his chest. "Stop this madness. You'll destroy what little is left of the realm." Jon didn't move. "You want to kill me, Robert? Do it. But it won't save your crown." Robert raised the hammer. And then he paused. His arm hung in the air, the weight of his years pressing down. He looked at Jon, so young, so calm, so much like Rhaegar. The ghost he thought he'd killed had come back, not as an enemy, but as a boy who didn't even want to fight. Suddenly, Robert dropped his arm. "I'm tired," he whispered. "So tired of blood, of lies, of thrones." The warhammer fell to the ground with a dull thud, echoing through the hall like a closing door. He turned his back. Everyone watched in silence as the once great Robert Baratheon limped away from the throne he had once bled the world to claim. At the door, he stopped. Without turning, he spoke. "You want the ashes? Take them. Rule your graveyard." Then he left. Daenerys said nothing. Jon looked down at the melted throne. Tyrion stepped beside him. "So what now?" Jon whispered. "Now we decide whether we're better than him, or just the next name in a bloody line." The silence that lingered after Robert Baratheon's retreat was not peace. It was a pause, a deep breath before the next scream. In the ruins of the throne room, ash still fell like snow. The Iron Throne lay warped and lifeless, its power reduced to a twisted sculpture. But the War of Thrones was not over. If anything, it had just changed form. Daenerys stared at Jon with a look that was hard to read, part admiration, part fear, and perhaps even jealousy. He stood there like a reluctant storm, unaware of the winds he carried within him. Tyrion broke the stillness. "So we have no king, no queen, no throne. Just a pile of melted steel and too many swords pointed at each other." "We don't need a throne," Jon said quietly. "We need peace." Daenerys turned sharply. "Peace doesn't come with surrender, Jon. Robert may have walked away, but the lords loyal to him won't. The Lannisters, the Tullys, the Vale, they'll regroup. You think they'll bend the knee because he dropped his hammer?" "They might," Jon said, "if you don't burn their cities down first." The words hit harder than intended. Daenerys stiffened, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I've fought for the people," she snapped. "Freed them, bled for them. But every time I come to claim justice, they call me a tyrant. They fear my fire more than they feared Robert's wine." "Because fire leaves nothing behind," Jon replied. Tyrion looked between them, his mind already racing. "We must act before the realm tears itself apart. Someone has to rule, or others will rise from the ashes to claim it." Grey Worm stepped forward. "The Queen will rule." But the silence that followed was not agreement, it was doubt. Ned Stark finally spoke. "She may have the dragons, but he has the blood." His eyes were on Jon. Daenerys turned to Ned, her voice cold. "And would you put him on the throne instead of me?" "I would put whoever could unite the realm without destroying it," Ned said. "I've seen too much death, too many kings who thought fire and steel were enough. The people need more than a conqueror. They need a ruler they trust." Daenerys' eyes shone with something between rage and heartbreak. "And you think they'll trust a bastard born in secret?" "No," Jon said suddenly. "They won't. That's why I won't take the throne." Everyone turned to him. Tyrion blinked. "You're refusing?" "I never wanted it," Jon said. "I still don't. I don't care about bloodlines. I care about stopping more death. That's all." Daenerys looked at him for a long, piercing moment. Then she stepped closer, her voice quiet now. "If you won't take it, then will you stand beside me? Rule with me. We can rebuild what they broke, together." The room held its breath. Jon looked into her eyes. There was still warmth there, still hope. But also something else, desperation. "I'll follow what's right," he said carefully. "Not crowns, not names. If you bring peace, I'll stand beside you. If you bring fire again..." He let the words hang. Daenerys turned away, hiding the storm in her eyes. Before anyone could speak further, a loud clatter echoed from the corridor. Sir Davos Seaworth entered, sweat on his brow. "Ravens have come. News from the Reach. The Lannister army has gathered near Harrenhal, led by Lord Tyrion's brother, Ser Jaime, and they're not alone. House Arryn has joined them. They mean to take King's Landing back by force." Tyrion's mouth went dry. "My brother wouldn't..." "He would," Ned interrupted. "If he believes you've turned traitor." Daenerys closed her eyes, then turned to Grey Worm. "Ready the Unsullied. Summon the Dothraki riders. I will not be driven out by lions and birds." Jon stepped forward. "Dany..." "No," she cut him off. "This is the last time I'll bend. They want war, I'll give them fire. This time, I won't stop." Jon looked at her, truly looked, and saw what he had feared. Not madness, but a wound that had festered so long it had begun to burn on its own, and maybe soon it would burn everything. The air above King's Landing was heavy, not just with the smoke of melted stone, but with the tension of two wars colliding, one from the past and one yet to begin. On the hills beyond the city, banners of red and gold fluttered in the wind. The Lion had returned. Jaime Lannister, wearing golden armor, now dulled by years of battle, sat astride a white horse, gazing at the city that once crowned him Kingslayer. He had never wanted to lead an army again, yet here he was, with 20,000 men, knights from the Westerlands, Arryn archers from the Vale, and banners of houses loyal to the old regime. At his side rode Jon Royce, his face grim. "Are you certain about this, Jaime? Marching against your own brother?" Jaime didn't answer immediately. His green eyes flicked toward the smoke above the Red Keep. "I warned him," Jaime said finally. "I begged him to stay away from her. But if Tyrion sides with Daenerys, he leaves me no choice." Behind him the soldiers waited. Many had wives and sons within the city. Others still bore wounds from Robert's rebellion or the Greyjoy uprising. All of them had one thing in common: they feared dragons more than death. But inside the city, fear was not enough to stop preparations for war. The Unsullied stood in perfect rows near the inner gate. Dothraki's screamers filled the fields behind the Red Keep, sharpening blades and whispering war songs in their guttural tongue. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion circled above like shadows of judgment. Daenerys stood in black, her cloak flapping in the wind, her silver hair tied tightly behind her. Her face had hardened in the last few hours. Whatever mercy once lived in her eyes was now buried under layers of betrayal, rage, and exhaustion. Jon Snow approached her quietly. "They're here," he said. "Ser Jaime leads them." She nodded without looking at him. "Then let him see what loyalty costs." "Dany," Jon said carefully, "if we strike first, innocent people will die. You know what war inside the city looks like. If you burn them—" "I'm not here to be loved," she snapped. "I'm here to end the game they've played for generations. Every time someone like me rises, they crush them. They lie, they betray, they kill, and then they call it peace." Jon stepped in front of her. "And what you do now, will they call that peace?" She stared at him, eyes full of flame. "Will they call you king if I die today?" Jon froze. Daenerys stepped closer, lowering her voice. "They won't let you walk away, Jon. Not with your name. Not with your blood. If they don't kill you, they'll use you. I'm the only one standing between you and a knife in the dark." Jon shook his head. "We can still stop this. Parley, talk, send Tyrion to Jaime." "No more talking," she whispered. "Let them come. Let them burn if they must." Far behind them, Tyrion watched from a tower, his face pale, lips pursed in worry. Davos stood beside him. "She's slipping," Davos muttered. "Your queen has a wildfire in her heart." Tyrion didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the far ridge, where the golden lions were lining up, and a white raven flew overhead. "Maybe we all are," Tyrion said. "We all carry the fire now." Below, Grey Worm tightened his grip on his spear. He turned toward the dragons, watching Drogon land atop the wall with an earth-shaking thud. The roar that followed sent flocks of birds scattering. The ground beneath the city trembled. War wasn't coming. It was here. As the sun dipped below the horizon, King's Landing found itself between two choices: old blood and new fire. And at the heart of it stood Jon Snow, torn between a queen he could no longer trust and a realm he could no longer walk away from. The first arrow flew before dawn. A single shaft of wood and steel, loosed by a nervous Vale archer, slipped from trembling fingers and arced over the gate of King's Landing, landing harmlessly on the cobblestones. But it was enough. The Unsullied moved as one, silent, swift, deadly. Horns sounded across the walls. Dothraki screamed from the east. The three dragons took to the skies, wings tearing the clouds apart like curtains of smoke. The siege of King's Landing had begun. From the far ridge, Jaime Lannister watched the dragons rise into the heavens. Even after all these years, they didn't look real. They were creatures from children's tales, from nightmares whispered by old men after too much wine. But the fire was real. The fear was real. He turned to Lord Royce. "Hold the archers. Don't provoke the fire unless we're ready." Royce nodded. "And when will we be ready, Ser Jaime?" Jaime looked toward the gates. "When I find Tyrion." Inside the city, chaos churned like a black tide. Civilians had either fled or locked themselves in their homes. The Red Keep stood like a wounded fortress, its top scorched from Drogon's earlier warning shot. Jon Snow, armored in dark steel, moved through the courtyard with Ghost at his side, giving commands to calm the civilians and protect the inner walls, not just from invaders, but from Daenerys' fury. "Keep the people away from the main gates," Jon ordered. "If fire falls, it won't fall neatly." Ser Davos limped beside him, worry etched deep into his weathered face. "Do you think she'll show restraint?" Jon didn't answer, because he already knew the truth. Restraint had been burned away the day Daenerys melted the Iron Throne. Atop the highest tower, Daenerys stood with Drogon, the beast growling softly beneath her. She looked down upon the realm that had once scorned her father, hunted her brother, tried to murder her in the womb. They would bend, or they would burn. Tyrion climbed the steps behind her, breathless. "Please," he said, "give me a chance. Let me speak to Jaime. He might surrender. Spare the city! Daenerys didn't look at him. You would trust your brother's mercy over mine. I would trust his guilt. You think you've been betrayed, Daenerys. So has he. He loved this city once. He saved it from wildfire. Let him do it again. There was a pause. Then softly she nodded. You have until the sun touches the walls. After that, I make no promises. Tyrion exhaled and descended as fast as his legs would allow. Beyond the gates, in the shade of the broken outer wall, Jaime found his brother. Tyrion arrived, cloaked in ash and urgency, eyes wide. Don't do this, Jaime. Don't let this become another sack of King's Landing. Jaime looked tired, bone-tired. It's not my choice anymore, little brother. She's bringing fire no matter what. Then help me stop it, Tyrion said. Help Jon take control. She trusts him. She doesn't trust anyone, Jaime muttered. Not anymore. Not since you. Tyrion stepped closer. I beg you! You've always said you're no hero, but for once, be the man who stops the fire before it consumes everything. Jaime stared at him for a long time, then nodded. If I go inside, he said, it won't be to kill her. It'll be to save what's left. Tyrion placed a hand on his shoulder. That's enough. They embraced briefly, two broken brothers beneath a burning sky. Back inside the city, Jon stood atop the ramparts, staring out toward the battlefield. He could see Daenerys mounting Drogon. He could see her eyes. And he knew she was not here to win a war. She was here to end a legacy. The dragons rose, and from the walls came the great sound of bells ringing across King's Landing, the universal sign of surrender. The battle was over. The war could end. But Daenerys did not stop, not even for a second. Drogon let out a thunderous roar, and then he dove toward the Lannister forces, toward civilians, toward surrendering soldiers, and from his throat came a blaze of fire so bright the sky turned orange. Jon screamed, "No!" But the fire had already fallen. The fire did not fall once. It came in waves. Drogon's flame carved through the battlefield, incinerating everything in its path. Knights screamed, shields melted, stone shattered. The Lannister front lines, already lowering swords in surrender, were turned to ash in seconds. Men who had laid down their arms burned just as fast as those who held them. Daenerys Targaryen did not blink. From atop Drogon, she moved with calculated vengeance. She didn't strike military targets, she struck symbols. Supply carts, white flags, command tents, even the outer homes of surrendered families. Her rage had taken form. It had grown wings. Inside the city, Jon Snow raced through smoke-filled alleys, trying to herd survivors into cellars and tunnels. "Move! Go underground!" he shouted, ghosts snarling at his side. Civilians ran in blind terror, many unable to tell whether they were fleeing dragons or the Dothraki, who followed the flames like shadows. Grey Worm had entered the fray too, not to protect, but to finish. When he saw Lannister men throw down swords, he didn't hesitate. He cut them down where they stood, eyes hollow, vengeance guiding his blade. Jon saw it happen. He tried to stop him. "Grey Worm!" They've surrendered, but Grey Worm didn't even look his way. He was no longer following orders. He was following pain. His queen's wrath had become his. And in that moment, Jon knew something clearly. The war wasn't for the throne anymore. It was for the soul of the realm. Across the ruined gate, Jaime Lannister fought his way through fire and screams. His golden hand blackened with soot, his sword arm bloodied. He wasn't fighting to kill, he was fighting to reach the Red Keep. Tyrion was right, he muttered. I should have never left her. But it wasn't Cersei he was thinking of now. It was honor, the thing he had chased and failed all his life to claim. As the walls began to shake and Dragonflame licked the upper towers, he found Daenerys descending atop Drogon, near the broken remnants of the throne room. He raised a hand. "Daenerys!" She turned, and her eyes, those silver eyes that once held dreams, now only held fire. "Don't do this," Jaime said. "They rang the bells. They rang them for Rhaegar too," she whispered. "And then they killed him." "You've won," he pleaded. "You don't need to burn the world to prove it." Daenerys stepped down from Drogon slowly, her boots touching the scorched stones. "This world never belonged to us. It was always theirs. The liars, the usurpers, The betrayers, she stepped closer. But I'll build a new one they'll never take from me. Jaime's hand fell to the hilt of his sword. Not like this, and Daenerys saw it. For a split second she saw Rhaegar in Jaime's eyes, the brother she had loved, the man who died with music in his heart. But her heart had no music left, only fire. With a silent command, Drogon reared up behind her, smoke curling from his nostrils. Before he could strike, a blade slid through Daenerys' chest. She gasped. Blood spilled from her lips, not from Jaime's sword, but from Jon Snow's. He stood behind her, eyes broken, holding the dagger she had once given him in peace. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I loved you, and I still do. But I can't let you burn the world." Daenerys stumbled forward, trying to speak. Her hand reached out, toward Drogon, toward Jon, toward a future that would never be. She fell, and the world stood still. The great beast Drogon landed beside her body, letting out a howl so deep it cracked stone. He nudged her gently, again and again, unable to understand, unable to accept. When he saw Jon, he roared. But instead of killing him, Drogon turned and unleashed fire, not at Jon, but at the melted Iron Throne. He burned it until there was nothing left but slag and shadow. And then, with a final cry, Drogon took her in his claws, her body limp, and flew into the ash-filled sky, disappearing into the unknown. The fires burned for days, and when they cleared, King's Landing was half gone. Tyrion and Ser Davos organized the survivors. Ned Stark, disillusioned and aged in soul, left for the north with what men he had. Grey Worm vanished into the east with the remaining unsullied. No one stopped him. No one dared. And Jon, he did not stay. He gave the crown to no one. He left the ruins, mounted a horse and rode north, beyond even Winterfell, beyond the wall, where no thrones waited, where no fire followed, just snow and silence.